As part of the Andes Researchers Initiative, this presentation looks at India as an international business destination. India is a fast-growing country with a large population and a developing economy. It is becoming more connected to the global market, which makes it an important opportunity for Australian firms looking to expand overseas. In this presentation, we'll first look at India's political and legal environment and how it affects businesses. Then we will examine India's economic and human development. After that, we will compare cultural differences between India and Australia. Finally, we will apply trade theories to explain which industries India should specialize in and decide which theories is more suitable.
Hi everyone, my section focuses on question 1, which looks at how globalization has influenced India's political economy and what legal challenges this may create for Australian firms. My main argument is simple. Globalization has made India more open and competitive, but India is still state-influenced and legally complex. So, for Australian firms, India is a major opportunity, but not an easy entry market. Firms should not only look at India's market size, they also need to understand India's situations, regulation, and local business environment. For the second part, to understand India's political economy, I use 3 connected systems. So, political system, the economic system, and the legal system. Politically, India is a crazy, but government priorities still shape business activity. Economically, India has become more market-oriented after liberalization, with more private sector competition. Legally, the system is still complex, and regulation can vary across sectors and states. The key point is that globalization has changed India's economy, but it has not removed state influence. This is why Australian firms need to treat India as an institutional environment, not just a large consumer market. For the third part, a major turning point was India's reform period in the early 1990s. Before these reforms, India had a more protected economy with stronger state planning, license rules, import restrictions, and tighter limits on foreign investment. After reforms, India moved toward market liberalizations. There was more private sector competition, more openness to foreign firms, and stronger market incentives. Cherry and Bandleva argue that pro-market reforms changed the relationship between institutions and firm profitability in India. This shows that globalization did not only increase India's trade with the world, it also changed the rules of competition inside the Indian economy. For Australian firms, this creates opportunity because India is now more accessible, but it also creates pressure because firms must compete in a market where institutions and regulations are still changing. For the fourth part, another important point is that globalization did not only benefit foreign firms, it also strengthened Indian firms themselves. Cherry shows that India business groups became important players in firm direct environments. By developing country firms, this means large India firms have become more outward-looking and more competitive. This matters for Australian firms because India is not a weak local market. Many Indian business groups have strong local networks, better knowledge of regulation, and closer relationships with domestic institutions. So Australian firms cannot rely only on good products, international experience, or competitive prices. They need local partners, local market knowledge, and a clear entry strategy. In other words, competition in India is not on side. For the fact part, although India is more open to foreign firms, its legal and regulatory system can still create entry risks. The first challenge is complex tariff and customs rules. According to the USTI, India's tariff and customs system can be complex and may involve administrative discretion. For Australian firms, this means import costs can be harder to predict, and customs processes may slow down operations. The second challenge is administrative discretion, which can make compliance less predictability. The third challenge is sector-specific regulation. Some industries may still have approval requirements, ownership limits, or extra regulatory conditions, so firms cannot assume that every sector is equally open. The fourth challenge is federal implementation. India is a large federal country, so national rules may be applied differently across states. This can affect contracts, license, taxation, and day-to-day compliance. Overall, India is a high opportunity market, but also a high compliance market. For Australian firms, the main lesson is that market size is not enough. They need legal planning, local advice, careful due diligence, and adaptation to India's institutional environment. So my final judgment is clear. India is open, but it is not easy to enter.
Economic and human development in India. So first, I will talk about the economic and human development in India. India has experienced strong economic growth in recent years. Its GDP growth rate is around 6 to 7%, making it one of the fastest growing economies globally. As shown in the graph, although there are some fluctuations over time, the overall trend is still upward. In addition, India has a very large population, which creates a huge market. This leads to increasing demand for goods and services. Because of this, many international firms are attracted to India, including Australian companies. However, economic growth alone does not tell the full story. For the slide 2, human development challenges in India. When we look at human development, the situation becomes more complex. India's Human Development Index is around 0.64, which is considered a moderate level. There are still clear inequalities across regions and populations. For example, access to education and healthcare is uneven. Some areas have much better services than others. In addition, income inequality remains a challenge, meaning that not everyone benefits equally from economic growth. These issues do not only affect society, but also have direct impacts on business operating in India. Which matters more for Australian firms? So this leads to a key question. Which matters more for Australian firms entering India? Economic growth or human development? In my opinion, human development matters more, especially for long-term business success. Why human development matters more? There are three main reasons for this. First is workforce equality. A more educated and skilled workforce can improve productivity and efficiency. At the same time, Better health care helps create a more stable and reliable workforce. Second is consumer market potential. When income levels rise, people have stronger purchasing power. Also, the growth of the middle class increases demand for higher quality goods and services. Third is business sustainability. Better human development can reduce inequality and social risks. This creates a more stable and predictable environment, which is important for long-term investment decisions. Implication for Australian firms. So overall, India offers strong economic growth and significant market potential. However, human development remains uneven across regions and groups. This creates both opportunities and risks for Australian firms. Therefore, companies should not only focus on market size, but also pay attention to human development factors when making entry decisions. So, for long-term success, human development is a key factor that firms should consider.
Moving on to question 3. This section analyzes the cultural distances between India and Australia by applying Hofstede's cultural dimensions and Entrepreneur's framework. As established throughout international business studies, national culture shapes how firms operate across countries, including management styles, communication, and decision-making. While globalization has influenced cultural change, it accelerates cultural convergence over time. This also provides insight into whether these cultural differences between India and Australia are narrowing or continue to persist. Applying Hofstede's cultural dimensions, significant differences can be identified between India and Australia. India has a high power distance, suggesting that firms tend to adopt hierarchical structures with centralized authority. In comparison, Australia has a low power distance, preferring more equal and decentralized management structure. Regarding individualism, India is more collectivist, focusing on group loyalty and relationships, while Australia is highly individualistic, valuing personal achievement and work efficiency. These cultural expectations profoundly impact workplace behavior and organizational structure, thereby creating potential challenges for firms operating across both countries. Trompenaar's cultural dimensions further explain how these cultural differences shape business practice. India is generally aligned with particularism, meaning that personal connections are often prioritized over formal roles. However, Australia tends to be more universalistic, where rules and procedures are applied consistently regardless of personal relationships. Furthermore, India is more oriented toward ascription, where status is influenced by factors such as age, background, and social position. Instead, Australia leans toward achievement, where status places greater emphasis on individual performance and accomplishment. Consequently, these cultural differences require multinational companies to adopt different management approaches. Taken together, the cultural distance between India and Australia highlights the challenges faced by firms and the need to adopt flexible management strategies. These challenges relate to differences in management styles, decision-making, and expectation of authority. For instance, Australian companies may need to adapt to a more hierarchical structure when operating in India, while also recognizing the importance of relationship building and business interactions. Moreover, Differences in expectations toward roles, authority, and performance may also lead to misunderstanding in the workplace. Cultural awareness and adaptability are essential for effective international business operations. Despite these differences, globalization has promoted cultural convergence. As countries increase their exposure to international markets, nations like India are gradually being influenced in their organizational behavior. For example, some companies have begun to adopt more modern, Western-like management styles. However, deep-rooted cultural values, such as class structure and relationship-oriented practice still remain. Therefore, while some cultural convergence can be observed, significant cultural differences still exist between India and Australia. Having considered cultural differences, we now move on to international trade.
As part of the Andes Researchers Initiative, I'll be looking at which industries India should specialize in for international trade. This will be examined using the theories of Adam Smith and David Ricardo, followed by an evaluation of which theory is more relevant for India. Understanding this is important for Australian firms, as it helps to identify where India has strengths and where business opportunities may exist. Adam Smith's theories of absolute advantages suggest that countries should specialize in industries where they are more efficient than other countries. Applying this theory to India, the country should specialize in industries such as IT services and pharmaceuticals. This is because India has a large amount of skilled workers, especially in technology and science, which allows it to produce these services efficiently. However, this theory has a limitation. India is not always the most efficient country comparing to developed economies, such as the United States. For example, developed countries such as the United States have stronger advantages in high-tech industries like advanced software, AI, and biotechnology, where they have better technology and higher productivity. This means that the absolute advantage cannot fully explain India's trade patterns. Because of these limitations, another theory can better explain India's trade patterns. David Ricardo's theory of comparative advantages says that the countries should specialize in industries where they can produce at a lower opportunity cost, even if they are not the most efficient. Based on this theory, India should specialize in industries such as IT services, outsourcing, and textiles. This is because India has relatively low labor costs and a large workforce, which allows it to produce these goods and services at a lower cost compared to other countries. For example, many multinational companies move their customer service and IT work to India because it is cheaper but still provides good quality. Research shows that firms choose countries like India based on cost advantages and efficiency. As shown in the chart, India's service exports have grown significantly, reaching around $374 billion in 2024. This highlights India's strong position in global service industries such as IT and outsourcing. This also shows that India is highly competitive in these industries on a global scale. In addition, companies organize their global operations by placing different activities in the country that offers the best cost benefits. Studies suggest that firms allocate tasks across countries to improve efficiency and competitiveness. For example, a company may keep management in a developed country but outsource services to India to reduce costs. This idea is also supported by globalization, where companies spread production across different countries. It is common for firms to break up their production processes and locate them in more cost-efficient countries, such as India. This shows that India plays a key role in global supply chain, especially in service-based industries. Overall, David Ricardo's theory is more suitable for India than Adam Smith's theory. This is because Adam Smith focuses on absolute efficiency, while Ricardo's theory is more flexible and allows countries like India to benefit from trade, even if they're not the most efficient. This is particularly important for developing countries, where cost advantages are often more relevant than advanced technology. India's strength is its large and relatively low-cost workforce, which allows it to compete globally in industries like IT, outsourcing, and manufacturing. This makes India an attractive location for international firms looking to reduce costs and improve efficiency. Therefore, the Indian government should continue to follow Ricardo's theory and support these industries, as this will help India remain competitive and grow in a global market. Overall, this presentation shows that India is a strong and growing place for international business. While there are challenges in the political, legal, and cultural environment, these can be managed with the right strategies. India's main strength is its large workforce and lower costs, which support industries like IT services, outsourcing, and manufacturing. Our analysis showed that comparative advantage is more suitable for India, as it explains how the country can benefit from trade, even if it is not the most efficient. For Australian firms, this means India offers strong opportunities for expansion, especially in service industries and global supply chains. Therefore, firms should consider India as an important market for future growth.